Okay. We'd like to welcome everyone to the first of our new series of lunchtime service conversations. We're really excited to have you here today. My name is Erica Wagner. I'm currently the president of the board of directors with UlsterCorps and also service learning coordinator at SUNY New Paltz. Our service conversation today is co-sponsored by UlsterCorps, the Benjamin Center at SUNY New Paltz, Ulster Savings Bank, Central Hudson, and the Bruderhof community. So we would like to thank everyone for being here and thank our sponsors for allowing this to take place today. So our service conversation, let me stop sharing. All right, our service conversation today is with Lester Strong, Executive Director of the Peaceful Guardians Project. Lester is the president of Courtney Strong and founder of Pathways, a series of workshops focused on developing a healthy relationship with love, fear, and death. He is the former CEO of AARP Experience Corps, which serves 35,000 elementary students who struggle with reading in 23 cities across the United States. Lester has also been a student of Eastern philosophies and meditation for 4 decades. He is a graduate of Columbia University Business School's Institute for Nonprofit Management. The Peaceful Guardians Project works with underserved youth and allows them to share their life experiences while engaging with police officers as fellow humans, often for the first time. Police officers become learners and teachers who share their skills and life experiences with youth in the communities that they protect. And community-based mentors help young people chart pathways to more fulfilling futures. So welcome, Lester Strong.
Erica, thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. It's really great to be with you, and great to be with you in this time, too. What an extraordinary period we're all going through at this moment. And I actually think that our discussion today is probably a microcosm or a small example of conversations that are that are happening all across the country, with people looking for ways to adapt and yet stay consistent with their goals and their missions. And that's really the story of Peaceful Guardians at this moment. A little bit of history about Peaceful Guardians Project. It started a little over 2 years ago when there was a real interest and concern about bringing young people and police officers in the city of Kingston together. There had been some incidents that had really flared up in the city, and unfortunately it appeared that kind of city officials and the community were talking past each other in a way that was, in my view, my humble opinion, not healthy. So, and of course, who really suffered most from that impasse was young people who were really in the middle of it all. So our strong interest was to create a bridge between police officers and young people who may have some way of engaging with police officers, and create a forum in which they really could come together, see each other as individuals and frankly as human beings and not stereotypes, and then to begin to look at issues that are actually common to both of them, and look for ways to really begin to resolve those issues. And of course, the foundation for that was to create an atmosphere of trust. So that was our work. We were working with the school system in a great way, working with middle school students at Miller and Bailey middle schools, and then some other leadership work with the high school. And we could begin to see what I thought was tremendous progress. We had worked with over 80 police officers and school resource officers, and more than 100 children in middle school. And what we do is feedback surveys after each one of our sessions, and both with police officers and with the young people, they consistently came back with really exemplary responses to the work that we're doing. And so we felt we were making progress and that we were really creating connections in the community that that we could get genuinely excited about. So much so that the police actually asked Peaceful Guardians to create a forum in which they would then, that we would then bring community leaders together with police officers in the same vein that we were doing with young people, to really look at some of these common issues. And because it was a smaller gathering, a gathering of about 15 officers and community members, there was really space for dialogue and conversation in a really, I think, very constructive way. And we were halfway through that, of course, when the pandemic hit. But hopefully we'll get creative and figure out a way to keep that going, because we think that those forums were really productive. So we'll keep working at that. But like so many nonprofits, actually UlsterCorps is probably a classic example of that. And that's why we're sitting here on Zoom today, is that how do we adapt in this COVID-19 environment? And that's what Peaceful Guardians chose to do. Since we could not be face-to-face with our young people or with our police officers, we then began to look around and ask ourselves, how can we best serve the community in this time? And as we looked around, what struck us was to create a service that would provide tutoring for young people, and not just all young people, but specifically those young people who were struggling academically. And again, no surprise to anyone on this call, what happens in a stressful situation is that the fault lines begin to show. And that's certainly what's happening here. We recognize that through this process, we see that there are young people who are academically struggling, and who, in an attempt to go online, didn't have computers or tablets that they might need, didn't have Wi-Fi service that they might need. Teachers are getting up to speed and learning how to work with young people online, all of those things which make the learning process that much more difficult. So we thought if we could supplement that work, particularly with young people who were struggling, that we actually could really help to augment the work of the Kingston school system. So that's what we've done. We've created an online tutoring system where we're working with the schools again, but also we're recruiting retired teachers as well as college students to serve as tutors. We've created a matrix whereby we can plug in struggling students with the subject areas where they have need. We're using the platforms that's most compatible with the school system. And now, frankly, what we're doing is finding the money to make it happen. We're in a fundraising phase, and we hope to have the dollars that we need to really launch this either this summer, which would be ideal, or in September of this year. But either way, again, given the nature of the information that's coming out regarding this virus and how it behaves, and first and second waves and distancing and all of that sort of thing, we strongly believe, based on all of the information that we're getting, that some aspect of online instruction, therefore online tutoring, is going to be an important part of the education process, certainly for the next year, if not 2 or 3 years. So we think we have an idea that is going to serve our young people and serve our community well. And that's what nonprofits do. They find their niche and their mission, and then work very hard to realize that mission in a fruitful way. So I'll stop there. Happy to take any questions that you might have, or just have a conversation about nonprofits in this time of COVID-19. So I'll
Lester,
stop.
I do have a question for you.
Okay.
As you're trying to integrate, so you've worked with police officers before, and now you're starting to coordinate with other people. Right, this is kind of a new thing, the tutoring piece.
It is
that correct?
new. It is new in the sense that we were not specifically focused on academics,
Okay.
but we were always focused on a young person's self-image.
Okay.
So that even through the tutoring process, a component of what we will do is kind of a mentoring process too. In other words, it's, when I was getting my teaching certificate, I had a professor who would constantly drum into us that you are not teaching subjects, you're teaching students. And what makes learning really valuable is that even though the material may slightly change, the faces and the temperaments and the personalities and the profiles of the young people that come into your classroom will constantly change. And that's the exciting part, is to bring them to the threshold of a learning experience in a way that makes it accessible for them. So in the same way, that's what we want to do with our young people, is to always affirm who they are as individuals, and to impart for them and with them a sense of this larger bit of knowledge that we hope to transfer.
And so as you move to an online forum and move toward more like holistic teaching and tutoring, what are some of the barriers that have come up? And also, do you have any highlights about that experience so far?
Well, we have not tutored yet, so we haven't had a direct experience of tutoring. Our own experience with young people tells us that some of the real work will be focus. We have found that our young people can be highly distracted. So it's really important that whatever we do in small bits, but also engage them in a way that the information, or the engagement, even before the information, that the engagement is something that they want to be a part of, and that they're not being talked at. One of the greatest lessons that I'm learning through our Peaceful Guardians process is that it's not about, telling them how lucky they are to be with us older adults and impart our wisdom. It really is about listening, and it is also about learning from them, to really understand that they also are teachers. They're teaching us, if we are open and willing and receptive to the kind of lessons and insights that they want to give to us. So it's really understanding and helping them to appreciate that it's a two-way process, that we both have roles, but at the same time, by having respect for those roles, that we're both learning, and it's really a wonderful symbiosis where we're both benefiting from the process.
I do have another question
Okay.
For you, which I just forgot. Well, let me think. Let's see if anybody else has any other questions.
John is waving his hand.
Lester, has the police force aspect of this really not been included in the tutoring goals?
Not in the tutoring goals, but we do, just before the pandemic hit, we were in training sessions, wellness training sessions with police officers. There had been a new crop of officers who had come into Kingston, and we were doing 16 hours of training, wellness training with them. And we had been invited to do what the officers were, or the police department was calling in-service training, where they wanted us to do a 2-hour refresher course with the entire department. So that's what we were in the midst of doing, were these 2-hour refresher courses for the complete department. We hope to go back to that in the fall. Whether we can do it face-to-face or whether we have to do it just as we're doing it here on Zoom is an open question, but we fully expect to get back to that. What we now have to do is figure out a creative way to continue to bring students and police officers together in a virtual space, and we haven't quite figured that out yet. So we'll see.
Is it possible that any officers would step up to be tutors?
That's possible. And for us, we think that this presents another great opportunity for us, where we can work with students who are in the midst of that learning process now, college students, so that we could create what we call near-peer relationships, where not only are they imparting great and wonderful information, but also they serve, just by virtue of who they are, as role models. They can say to these young people, I'm here and I was where you were, only 3, 4, 5 years ago. And now I'm making it through college, and by my example, I want to demonstrate to you that you can as well. So I think it's a powerful message that we can begin to send to our young people. And we look forward to capitalizing on that opportunity.
I remember my question now. So originally you were going to speak at our service summit this year, and our theme for the service summit was to be collaboration and partnerships. Can you tell us a little bit about how you find your collaborators? I think about all of these nonprofit organizations that want to get into the schools. How do you form those relationships, and how do you find the right person or the right organizations?
That's a great question. And actually, from the first iteration to the second iteration of Peaceful Guardians, it's really been important to create those kind of relationships. For Peaceful Guardians, what we have done is, first of all, look at what our mission is. And within the scope of that mission, who and what are the organizations that, in our judgment, really align with the work that we want to do. So for Peaceful Guardians 1.0, it was the police department, it was the city of Kingston, it was the school district. So those we saw as really not just key, but critical partners. And what we tried to do was to build, a rationale for the program, and then to share that rationale with all of those, what we saw as key stakeholders. And you're right, that we had to do was to identify who was the right person to connect us with key decision makers in each one of those sectors. So again, I was very fortunate in that I was working with Drew Andrews, who I'm sure many of you know from the Center for Creative Education. And he really was extremely excited about. Oh, I actually should mention the Center for Creative Education, which was one of our partners in 1.0. And so it was through the relationships that Drew and Evman to really touch with the superintendent, with the mayor, with the police chief and others, and gave us a way in to present the idea and the concept for Peaceful Guardians. In the same way, Peaceful Guardians 2.0, again, it has been really important that we identify key partners, and in identifying those key partners, then present to them the vision and the mission of this work, and to really articulate kind of how we see each person or each organization in that. And, you know, we've been very lucky in, again, with the school district and with the YMCA, by the way, the Boys and Girls Club, kind of service that we have. And if you don't mind my saying so, Erica, you, and having a conversation with you and your contemporaries in colleges and universities that surround Kingston, to identify young people and students that we want to bring in as these tutors / mentors for our young people. So it's always looking first at your mission, identifying what that mission is, looking at, and then rippling out from there to identify who and what could be key stakeholders that can facilitate the success of your mission, and then hopefully make a compelling argument for why these relationships can work. I'm a big fan of John Wooden, who was the coach of UCLA, and he was fond of saying, success comes when you don't worry about who gets the credit. And I totally believe that. It's not about, you know, anyone being held up higher than anyone else. It's really about the mission having primary importance and all of us working together to achieve that mission. That's how communities, that's how cities, that's how countries, and that's how this world gets raised. So that's the process.
Great, thank you. Did anybody else here have any questions? I thought I saw another hand raised. Rick.
Myself. Oh, we go. Lester, I was thinking as you were talking, UlsterCorps in its essence are dreamers in the best sense of the word. Wonderful people that are positivistic, see problems, want to solve them, et cetera, et cetera. And it's such a wonderful cohort. And thinking of addressing them in particular, being a dreamer for a moment, leaving out the coronavirus and any other kind of limitations that might be easy to perceive. Do you have any thoughts about where you'd like to see Peaceful Guardians go in the next 5 or 10 years? What would that look like?
Yeah, I do. Well, again, whether it's the first version or the second, I think either version, has a level of relevance that really could be very useful for this country. Certainly, at the heart of what we do for Peaceful Guardians is to help to give our young people a sense of themselves, a sense of their potential, and then to give them tools to, to enable them to navigate whatever circumstances they are in to achieve what they want to achieve. One of the things that, again, in talking to the young people that we've been working with, is that they kind of don't like to be acted upon. In other words, we're going to give you this, and we're going to give you that, we're going to give you this. So if we give you all of this, then you should be able to go figure it out. But our approach has been, look, first of all, you tell us what you want. We're not going to tell you what you should want. You tell us what you want. And then let us give you some tools that will help you navigate this world and the world that you're in, no matter how easy or how difficult it might be, so that you can get to where you want to be. For example, we talk with our students about what anger is, what fear is, what love is, what purpose is, and then give them the ability to identify what relationship they want to have with love, fear, anger, purpose, so that they then have their own tools to really figure out how they want to get to where they want to be. So at that, in my judgment, there are millions of young people in this country who are not being given those tools. And if through our community support and our wise elders and our police officers and others in our community, we can begin to give our young people those tools, I think we're doing a great service. And I think we can elevate and harvest the great contributions of these young people by giving them those tools. So that's 1.0. 2.0, again, as we've seen in the education system, there are gaps in the learning process. There are gaps in the ability of young people to take advantage of the new technologies that are available for learning. So that if we can begin to acclimate young people to these tools, and while doing that, also give them the ability to once again learn, and once again to be able to see role models of people who have gone not long ago and traveled the same path that they are traveling, and give them a sense of possibility. Yes, I think that there's a real need for that kind of service. So whichever iteration continues to flourish, I think both or either of them, I think, will provide a real service. How that will scale, I think, is another question. I think it will probably be more collaborations that will expand the geographic footprint that would allow these services to be made available to more and more young people. But that's a more detailed, thing that I'd have to think harder about. But I think that in terms of the inherent value of what we are providing, yes, I think there is a need across this country, and I would love to see Peaceable Guardians continue to expand.
So well put. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you.
As we come up on the 12:30 time, I kind of want to give you an opportunity to tell anybody out there, either from a nonprofit organization or potential volunteers, how they can get involved with this project and how they can be in touch with you.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. The easy answer is call me, send me an email. If you don't have my email address or phone number, certainly Erica and Beth do. I hope what I've done today is give you a reasonable sense of what we're looking to accomplish. We are squarely committed to young people in whatever form that might take. It's my passion, it's my work. And if it is something that you feel would be worth your time, please let us know, because we absolutely can use your support, your hands, your wisdom to keep this work going. So thank you. And I must say, I'm so gratified to see on the call a number of people that I've already had the opportunity to collaborate with. I see Robin on the call, and of course, Kim and Rick and Susan. It's really gratifying to work in partnership with all of you. I believe in community, and I believe that we are better together. We're stronger together. Thank you. So
Well,
I'll
looking at
stop
all
there.
of the faces here, I think you are in good company in believing in your community.